the love of God once we understand our sinfulness and know how far we've fallen. We could never possibly understand the depth of the love of God unless God were willing to reach down and to love fallen creatures who are distinctively unlovable. And we would never know the height of His love for us were it not for the fact that He would take us from the quarry of sin and chisel us and then exalt us and put us at the right hand of God the Father, kings and priests with Christ. That would have never happened were it not for the fact that there was evil in the world. So you see, God is displaying His incredible grace, His love to fallen humanity. And so God is showing His superiority in love. Fourth, He shows us His wisdom. Notice what it says in chapter 5, verse 12. And I wish that we had time to go through the entire song here, which is sung in honor of Christ. But it says in verse 12, saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches." And the word that I want to emphasize here is wisdom. Wisdom. We can see God's wisdom in creation. When God put you together, it was much more complicated than you maybe realize. You have billions of cells in your body, and every one of the cells that you have has as much activity in it as a city the size of Chicago or Tokyo. We are incredibly, wonderfully and fearfully made. And we can see God's wisdom. But we can also see God's wisdom in salvation. The fact that the Lord was willing to come down and to become identified with human evil so that Jesus, still remaining spotless and pure in His person, could nevertheless take the sin of the world upon His shoulders and bear it, so that God the Son would make a payment to God the Father, so that we as sinners could be acquitted without God bending the rules one iota. Incredible wisdom. This morning when I arrived at the church, I was looking for a quotation that I couldn't find. And I'm sorry I couldn't find it, because it talked about the absolute wonder of God being able to come so close to human sin and suffering and come to this earth and be identified with the whole thing and still remain untainted. Boy, that took wisdom. And throughout all of eternity, once we understand it better, we are going to marvel at the wisdom of God. We're going to say, this is unbelievable to think of what He did and how He did it, once we understand the nuances of what it was all about. Then also, we will emphasize the truth of God, His superiority in truth. Turn to Revelation chapter 19 for just a moment. After these things I heard, as it were, a loud voice of a great multitude in heaven saying, "Hallelujah, salvation and glory and power belong to our God, because His judgments are true." Do you realize today that sin gave God an opportunity to contrast His truthfulness with all the lies that Satan and the world have to offer? And I might say that in opposition to the living and the true God, who is truth by His very character, truth isn't something that God just does. Truth is something that God is. That His very nature is true, and everything that is opposed to God of necessity is always false and illusionary. That's why Satan is described in the New Testament as the founder and the author of lies. And you know that the whole world is filled with lies. That's why we are tempted so strongly. It's because of the believability of some of the lies that come to us through society, through the media, through our relationships, or whatever. And we believe these lies because sometimes lies can feel so good. But we'd never understand truth. Truth would be quite meaningless in a universe in which there was no evil. So God is on display, and He's saying, throughout all of eternity, the saints are saying, "God, you are true." Now I want you to notice a sixth way in which God is showing His superiority, and that is in the very same text, Revelation 19:2, because of His justice. If we had time to read chapters 17 and 18 of the book of Revelation, we find out that God has just destroyed the city of Babylon, a symbolic city of all the evil and the wickedness of the world all coming together. And it says, after these things I heard, as it were, the sound of a great multitude in heaven. You say, well, who in the world is that great multitude? That's you, my friend. That's you.
Well, it almost takes our breath away as we think about eternity, doesn't it? This is Pastor Lutzer, and we're almost at the end of our series of messages titled, What is God Up To? And in a moment, you'll be given information as to how you can receive this series for yourself and then share it with a friend. And remember as you do that we are dependent upon our many listeners to help us financially and in your prayers as we share the good news of the gospel by means of radio. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dr. Lutzer. That was Dr. Erwin Lutzer continuing a look back at planet Earth, the final part of his series, What is God Up To?, which explores God's purposes for his creation. Be listening tomorrow as Erwin Lutzer concludes this message and this entire series. We believe this 8-part series will help you understand God's overall plan for the human race. What is God Up To can be yours on CD as our thank you when you give a gift of any amount to support Running to Win. For details, call 1-800-215-5001. That's 1-800-215-5001. On the Internet, go to offerrtw.com. That's offerrtw, all one word, .com. Or write to Running to Win, Box 11174, Chicago, Illinois, 60611. This is Dave McAllister. Join us for tomorrow's Running to Win.